The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows. To find out more and to enter to win, visit afteractionproject.com/giveaway.
If you and I are standing on a range together, we're competing.
So you need to take a gun, you need to pick it up, and you need to be pulling the trigger on it more than you're on Facebook.
First of all, Mike, I got to say, I like your style, man. Goatee, bald head. No, I mean,
and he teaches you how to be able to continue your training. That way you can get better all year round.
No, because you're using a camera or dial-up internet connection from the 1990s. It says do work, though. I'll let him know it says do work.
This is the After Action Project, and we're bringing you the student's perspective on firearms training. This is the podcast that takes you inside the eyes of the student and the mind of the instructor, from practical to tactical, medical to legal, and everything in between. If there's a course for it, this is your fly-on-the-wall After Action destination. This is the After Action Project.
We have some pretty big news today. We're launching a monthly giveaway for our listeners. Each month, one lucky winner will win a Cerakote or stippling job. How do you say that word? Provided by Southwest Gunsmith Technologies. It's a $300 value, but more importantly, these guys do some of the best Cerakote work in the industry, and they don't have ridiculous lead times. To find out more and to enter to win, visit afteractionproject.com/giveaway. You can also support the show through Patreon, patreon.com/afteractionproject. And as always, we want to thank our buddies over at JCAA for providing some great ammunition, some of the flattest shooting ammo that we've shot and the cleanest ammo that I've shot, which works out really well for me because I clean my guns never, and not nearly as often as I should. Tonight, we are joined by Mike Seeklander of shootingperformance.com. He's doing all kinds of crazy and awesome, not crazy stuff, all kinds of awesome stuff. We're going to be specifically talking about competition handgun level 1 with his student, Jeff. At the end of the show, or throughout the show, we're also going to talk about some other training opportunities that you guys can take advantage of from the comfort of your home. So get in the comment section, share this out with your friends and family. Any questions that you have, feel free to leave them down below, and we'll get to them throughout the podcast. Andy, talk to us a little bit about your experience in competitive shooting, and I'm going to check audio on some things.
You know, I have a little bit of experience in competitive shooting. I do it more for fun and anything. Yeah, I take that back. I'm lying. I'm doing it to get better as always, but I'm not good at it. I'll say that. I suck. Usually I'm in the middle of the pack or so with just our local stuff. I do it just to continue my proficiency, to get faster and learn like that. I'm excited about this podcast tonight because I'm watching a lot of Mike Seeklander's YouTube videos here recently, and I really like the content that he gives, and I'm looking forward to learning tonight and see what he's got.
Judson, have you shot any competition? Have you shot competitively at all?
If you and I are standing on a range together, we're competing.
But in like a semi-formal setting where, the buzzer goes off and then they rank you at the end of the deal.
No.
Nothing like that?
No, I haven't. I live in Durango, Colorado, and there's not a lot of opportunities for me to compete over here. The closest place we have is Farmington, which is about an hour and 20 minutes south, Andy? Somewhere in that
about 40 minutes south.
Okay, 40 minutes south. I never go there because it's a shithole. But editor, you can edit that out. But yeah, I mean, I've never really gotten into the competition scene. I've always been on the training side of things, and it's not that I'm against it for any reason whatsoever. I never had the opportunity really to get involved in it easily.
I was talking to Jeff on before we went live, and his experience and the different courses that he's taken. And he was talking about his journey from unclassified, never shot a match before, to where he's at now. Jeff, you want to talk to us a little bit more about that, where you started, who you started with, and what that process looked like for you?
Yeah. So I started shooting IDPA. Oh, wow. Probably 10 years ago. And I started as unclassified, kind of eked my way into like sharpshooter because I thought I was a decent shooter, but then ended up taking a bunch of courses with Mike and with a bunch of instructors and really starting to focus my efforts on training. And I reached master. So now I'm a master level shooter for IDPA.
For those folks that might not be familiar with the different classifications in IDPA, can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I believe I think in IDPA, there's like 600 or 700 master shooters overall for the entire, I think it's like 19 or 20,000 members that are a part of it. And the different skills are from like unclassified, sharp marksman, sharpshooter, or there's a novice in there as well, and then expert, and then a master, and then a distinguished master, like Mike.
All right. So speaking of Mike, talk to us how you entered the world of training and why you train folks.
Oh, well, that's a great question, man. It's how long do we have?
As long as you'd like.
So first of all, congrats to Jeff on the journey. And I guess I haven't put it together in my mind that when I first met, he was this unclassified shooter. So that's cool, man. That's actually really cool. He was sitting there in the first class with me. But I've been teaching people for a long time. The truth is I started out instructing kind of informally. Man, this is probably back in 95, 96, right after I'd kind of got into competition shooting. Now, at the time, I was had just got out of the Marine Corps. I was still in the Marine Corps Reserve. I was a police officer in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I was just competing and shooting and training. And not just, a lot of people, I think sometimes maybe mislabel me as the competitive shooter or a competitive shooter. Man, back then I was fighting kickboxing. I was doing Okinawan freestyle karate. As a police officer, I was doing as much tactical stuff as I did competitive stuff, but I loved competing because it was just, it's straight up. It's like, within the rules of the game, who's better at this particular thing. But that led to me running into people in the range who were like, hey, how the heck do you do that? And then I started informally teaching. And that led to, I guess at some point in time when 9/11 happened, I had been in a course with Jerry Barnhart. For those of the listeners, viewers who don't know who Jerry Barnhart is, he was a old school guy called the Burner. And Jerry was a legendary shooter, multiple time national champion shooter, and turned me on to the FAM program. And I actually got hired as one of the first instructors up there after 9/11. So I started in December 29th of 2001, actually, which is kind of unique. It was a very unique time. And then that's when my professional full-time instructing career took off, as well as shooting.
And that's the Federal Air Marshal program. Is that what the FAM was?
Yep.
That's awesome. So with the competition Handgun Level I course, Jeff, what gear did you use? And talk to us a little bit about the format of that class.
Yeah, so the format, that one was a 2-day course. And the gear I used was simple. It was a standard belt. I used a competition holster that I had from CompTech, no retention on it, and then CompTech double mag pouch. And I shot an M&P. In fact, I shot a duty M&P, the one that I use for the sheriff's office, and it's the one I've used for a while now. And just that, and brought a notebook and an open mind and just try to go in and soak stuff in and learn how much I was doing stuff wrong and got corrected. And to help me on my path to being a better shooter with very secure fundamentals. So the first day is really about like getting everyone on the same page. And he has all sorts of different skill levels in each class. You've got people that are, the competition, not so much a super, super basic level, but the competition is a little higher level. But you have in that competition level, there's still a wide range of skill sets. You have people that are like sharpshooters all the way up to masters and other people like Phil sometimes, Phil Strader. he understands how to like make everyone feel comfortable and realize that it doesn't matter. You're not there to compete against the person next to you. He's there to teach you and how to make you get from where you're at to your next level. He's not trying to make everyone be a distinguished master all at once. He understands how to look and identify people and how to hit the fundamentals and stuff that he teaches and how to make it where they enhance their level. So it increases their performance.
Mike, talk to us about what's the minimum gear that I would need if I was going to take that class next weekend. What do I need to show up with? Obviously, the gun, the holster. Is there a specific type of holster that I need to run that course with? And how much ammo should I expect to shoot?
You know, the gear is actually really simple. If you have a basic, holster mag pouch for 2 mags, you can get by with probably 3 mags in the course. A gun that's reliable, that's a critical component. The round count on the course is listed at, I think, 1,200 or something like that. We don't normally hit 1,200, but I predict that because there's such a large variety of shooters that might show up. I may have a guy with a limited gun that's really fast on the trigger that really wants to work some extra reps in a drill. And, the last thing I want is shooters to run out of ammo. Typically, we'll hit between 950 to 1,050 rounds. So, really, that's it. Eye and ear protection, notebook, an open mind, and a willingness to maybe throw some things away that you believed in and become a better shooter.
All right. Now, an interesting thing about that is I've taken the competition handgun class a couple of different times, and each time I go, I learn something more, and I help to retain more information each time. And I can tell you, each time I go, it's not the exact same thing. Like, he's flexible in how he goes. He understands how to really take a look at who's at that class and where those individuals are to really tailor. There's a base framework for how it works out, but each time the class kind of goes in a little bit different routes, getting more and more information each time, if that makes sense.
So Mike, I actually, I run my classes very much the same way as far as like, Andy and I have taught a lot of instructor level classes together. And Andy, how many of our classes have been the same?
Just exactly what Jeff said. So we have a baseline kind of foundation. We call it the PowerPoint, if you will. But every single class, there's something new, something different, something changed. Judson is, he's another one of those instructors that's constantly trying to work to make his courses better, as we are as well. Break time, lunchtime, 2 hours after class, we're talking about what's going to change tomorrow and who's good and who needs to do this and who needs to fix this. So yeah, to answer that question, it's constant.
Right. So Mike, my question for you, and that was just kind of a comment on the how classes are fluid. But my question to you is, take the guns, the magazine, the ammo, take all of that out of the picture. How do you train a competitor? How do you train a competitor beyond the gears? If I understand your question correctly. Yeah, leave the gear out of it. I can teach somebody how to shoot, but I can't teach somebody how to compete. So how do you? Does that make sense? Well, and that's a unique perspective. But I'm going to tell you straight up that you have to be able to shoot to compete. Oh, of course. One of the things that I'm big on in my classes is I'm very, very skill focused. I don't, I've gotten to the point where I don't really care what drills we do specifically in the class, and they change every single time because I care about the thing that I'm trying to get them to do physically on the gun as well as mentally in terms of processing the information. So it is, the classes are certainly shooting driven. I care about people being able to shoot well first. That's really, the base fundamental course's purpose in life, grip, all the good things that require, a student to perform on demand with a gun. And here's the deal, from a subconscious or conscious level, if we have the programs written subconsciously like they should be, then we can compete. If those programs aren't written subconsciously, meaning the skill set is not developed to a certain point, then we can't go to a stage and execute those skills on demand. And you're going to be thinking through them. And while that's a way to compete, it's not a way to compete and do well in the mainstream of the game. And it doesn't matter if that's at the club level or at the national level. It's the same thing.
execute the skill subconsciously, which takes repetition after repetition after repetition of correction, which allows me to free my conscious mind up to execute and actually compete, which is a process of, all right, how do I score the best on this stage? How do I run the stage in the fastest time? How do I deal with the mental pressures of the other people that I'm around and I'm competing against? Because that's all part of the equation,
Yeah, and just to follow up with you've partially answered my question, but you touched on something that I want you to dive a little bit deeper into, and then I'll turn it back over to Andy and Jeremy. When you talk about that, I think I didn't phrase my question as well as I should have. You talked about the mental game, and that's really what I wanted to hear about. How do you prepare your competitors for that mental game? As far as, they can shoot, they can run the drills, they can run the stages, but how do you prepare them mentally to be at, whether it's the club level, state level, or national, whatever?
So, unfortunately, the answer, having done this for 20 to 25 years now, has come full circle. And I think the listeners and viewers will either be happy and surprised to hear this, or maybe be like, well, that's really boring. But I own, you can't see my bookshelf over there, but there's one in there. There's two in my bedroom. There's one upstairs. I own probably every book ever written on mental stuff. And the reason for that was I would go to a match and I would still fail. And I believe that failure was on the mental execution. And sometimes it is. Like if I didn't plan the stage well, that's a mental failure. But here's the real truth. And I would ask you all to ask yourselves this question. If I had a literal magic wand, right? And I could wave that magic wand, and with that magic wand, I could give you a set amount of skill that compared to any other shooter on this planet was 10% better. Could you never having competed before, go to a match and potentially execute and perform well? Probably not the first time, but after you realized how much better you were in terms of the shooting skill, the next time you would go, in other words, your learning curve would be like this in terms of dealing with the mental stresses at the match. Why? Because you have the confidence to know what you can do. So I hate to say this, a huge portion of the mental game is confidence in your abilities, which means that you need to take a gun, you need to pick it up, and you need to be pulling the trigger on it more than you're on Facebook, right?
How true that is. First of all, Mike, I got to say, I like your style, man. Goatee, bald head.
We got
perfect. All the ladies love us, of course.
Right.
So you hit the nail on the head with that thing. Exactly what I think too. So the first time I did competition, I've only done a few. I was so worried about trying to be good, trying to learn everything that's going on. There was 33 shooters. I think I placed 32nd. And then the next time I went, I think I was around 20. It just immediately jumped up about 10. And hopefully as I do this, the more time that I get, the better I get. And just that confidence alone and that mind game that you got to get out of your own head, first of all, before you can even start pulling the trigger, getting out of your own head. So I like that idea. I'm going to turn it over to Jeff really quick, because I'm going to ask you this question in the beginning, because this is always the hardest question to ask somebody. If you don't have an answer for me now, you can maybe answer by the end. If there's one thing that you could improve in Mr. Mike Seeklander's class, what would it be? See? I knew it'd be tough.
That's a tough one. Man, give me a little bit to think about that, because he's a well-rounded individual. I've got a little answer for you though. So one of the classes I took with him, it was a competition class this summer where he and Phil Strader co-taught a class, and the class was titled Fire and Ice. And there's a reason one's kind of ice cold, one's kind of hot. And by the end of the course, you got to figure out who is who. And so Mike is always very serious and understanding, but he's got a little hard shell to him to get through at first, because he's so passionate about training and teaching. But he warms up to you, but you just got to understand what his level of warmth is harder than most.
That's right.
You calling him a little stone cold there? Is that what you're saying?
Sounds like Rob Pankus.
Hey, Jeff, are you still, do you still compete fairly often?
Yes. I compete very often, at least once or twice a month. And then I've been traveling around for local, different state matches around, and the nationals for IDPA. Yeah.
Are you still, you said that that first course you took, you ran your duty gun. Are you still running that gun or a similar style gun?
Yeah. Currently right now, I'm actually just getting ready to switch off of that, to go into another division. And I'm trying to decide right now if I'm going to go into like a CCP division or an ESP division. I've got, 2 guns that'll work for both. And I'm just trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And how I'm going to figure that out is ensure that, my fundamentals for that 1911 platform are really going to, I'm going to get them baked in before I really jump that over there.
Can you expand on the CCP and the ESP? What are those?
So CCP is the concealed carry pistol. It's a short frame pistol. I believe it's got to be under 4.1 inches or something like that, about 4 inches and under. And the idea behind it is it's a concealed carry. So you don't have big, long, heavy guns. It's more that type of style. And for that one, I've got a Wilson Combat EDC X9 and 9mm that I'm going to shoot, which is a phenomenal gun. I actually saw it from Mike and got to shoot his for a little while and fell in love with it. And then ESP is the Enhanced Service Pistol Division, and it is more highly modified. You can adjust mag wells, the internal and external trigger mechanisms, and I believe some slide work too, sights and stuff. So there's more that you can modify in that division for the firearms themselves.
What I guess, Mike, what's your biggest goal for students after completing your competition handgun level 1 course?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. The original intent with my class or classes was to take the book I wrote and give students a 2-day basically coaching seminar so they understood how to take that program in the book and use it to its full extent, how to do that, or what the skills are. Like when I talk about grip, stance, trigger, sights, all those things, let's correct all those shooting related skill sets. And then, all right, here are the drills. Here's how you actually perform a drill. So, obviously I want to make people better shooters, but more importantly, I want to make them better practicers, trainers. I want to give them the ability to go to the range after the class and practice and train. Jeff is actually a good example. He is a training junkie, but he left the class and trained and worked and understood the program. A lot of people don't realize that that both the competition handgun book, I think I have a copy in the defensive handgun books, are full training programs. They're not like, I didn't just write them as like, here's another tactical handgun book, or here's another how to grip a handgun and shoot it fast book. They're a full systematic 3-phase training program. So that's the end goal for the students, is so they start that journey properly, because if not, a lot of people end up getting information. They misunderstand the information. They try to use it. And unfortunately, they do 5,000 repetitions that are not proper or correct. And then they have to come to a class like mine. So I fix the problem. So that's the end goal, or the biggest goal.
This book, is that oh no, this is your Art of Instruction book. So that's
Art of Instruction book.
There you go.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Great book, by the way, man. There's information overload. Mentioned earlier, talking about information overload, mentioned earlier some of your online training stuff. I was talking to Jeff earlier before we went live, and just talking about the content that you put out is just above and beyond what anybody else that I've seen puts out. In the firearms industry, the firearms training industry, there's a lot of, people like to keep things close to the chest, but man, you're literally an open book with everything that you do. So I appreciate that. I'm sure, I know it's benefited myself in the instruction and increasing my level of proficiency with the handgun. Sounds like Jeff is going to be a lifetime student of yours. what's your thought process behind that? You know, a lot of people say if you put all that stuff out there, it's just going to kill your training business. No. And, you know, there's a point where I oftentimes wonder, man, should I give all this stuff away for free? Because for a good example, beyond YouTube or whatever else, I'm live on Facebook twice a week now. In the past, I was live on Facebook 5 days a week. And then for a while, I cut that down to 3 days a week. You know, I figured it up. I've given away 400 and some plus hours of live content Q&A where I'm teaching an actual subject in one of my books. So, and I've oftentimes asked myself that, but to be honest with you, sales have gone up. I think people see me. They like how I speak and communicate, even though I'm the Iceman to an extent. I think I can become a little bit friendlier on camera. I'm better at projecting myself. They understand how logical the things I'm talking about are and how the depth to which I've thought them out. And the fact that I'm going, hey, free. I don't care what you buy. Matter of fact, go to YouTube first and watch all my free stuff. There's a whole handgun training program on YouTube it's not quite as good production. It's not as big and flavorful, but it's good enough to get you about as good as you want to get. So I think people appreciate that. And then I think they decide, well, man, I want that copy of that book. And then they just, people, I think it tends to grow from there. I'm not a marketing expert though, so I don't know. Maybe I do give away too much free stuff, but here's the point though. And I could say this equivocally. I didn't care about sales at all when I started the DDC, Daily Dry Fire Challenge. I knew it would give me more exposure, but I already had quite a bit of exposure. I filled classes up over a year in advance. I did it literally because I knew that if I started at 6 or 6:30 a.m., people had no excuse not to train. So, and if it was dry fire, there's no monetary excuse. They don't need a range. They don't need ammo. They don't need a lot of money. They can just get on and I can teach them how to perfect their grip, and they can ask me questions, and I can actually help them. So that was the biggest reason I did that.
Real quick, I know Judson's got something, but I think you had somebody on the plane with you here recently, Tim Heron. He's watching our show right now. Shout out to Tim. How's it going? He said you're an awfully nice guy, so I'm not so sure about this ice cold stuff and ice melon and all this. So Tim says you're a pretty good guy. That's what I hear.
I'm a nice guy. Hey, Tim Heron is an alumni of mine as well. Not that I taught him anything. Maybe he didn't learn anything from me, but he's a pretty damn good shooter now too, if I do say so myself.
So yeah, I've got a question for you. Coming back around to you're giving stuff away. I train instructors at the basic level, and I have several instructors that work with me. Blake Mooney, Andy Montoya is also works with me sometimes. Steve Reyes over on the Front Range. And they're always, when I'm teaching a class, like an RSO class or a cheap RSO class or something like that, I'll be like, man, I'll give you my slides. I'll give you everything so that you can teach, because I want them to be the best instructors they can possibly be, right? Yep. And they always keep telling me, don't give away SMI. And SMI is Silver Mountain Instruction. It's my instruction company. And I totally understand how that works, but my theory is, everybody's like, well, there's only so much pie out there for us to have. And my theory is let's not not give away the pie. Let's make the pie bigger. You know what I mean?
Right.
So my question for you is, over the last 4 or 5 months, I've been compiling a list, and I'm up to about 85 or 90. And it's my pro tips list. And what I do in my classes when I'm teaching instructors is every instructor will have a pro list in front of them. Mm-hmm. There are 80 or 90 different, these are my pro tips when you, as an instructor. And, during a break or a lull or just out of the random blue, I'll be like, hey, Mike, give me pro tip number 58. I have no idea what it is, and they'll read it out, and then we'll have a 5-minute discussion about it. So my question is if you can give a pro tip out to instructors, what would you say?
A pro tip out to instructors right now. And this, so not a shooting tip, a pro tip about shooting, a pro tip about being a better instructor.
Not necessarily about shooting, but about instructing in classroom and range time. And like one of Jeremy Gill's pro tips that he gave me was make sure you know the drills before you go to the range, kind of thing.
Yeah. Here's my baseline pro tip for instructors. Once again, I'm going to simplify this more than you want. Do the work do not be an instructor that uses the instructor term or title as, okay, I'm the instructor, you're going to listen to me, but I'm not really that good. Because as an instructor, and I know a lot of people may argue this, they may say, well, you don't have to be the best in the class. No, you don't, but you're the instructor, so you need to be pretty darn good. So here's my pro tip for instructors. Get off the Facebook and pick up the gun just like the shooters and be as good as you possibly can be. Because, and I learned this once a long time ago from a man named Rorion Gracie. You may know Rorion Gracie because he started the UFC. And Rorion Gracie's preached to us in his instructor training program, said the number one thing you need to have is a deep body or pool of knowledge, right? Without that deep body or pool of knowledge, you got nothing else. And if you strive as an instructor to seek that deep pool or body of knowledge out through practice and training and classes and online, like continually, you're going to be able to teach, from your knowledge and your heart because you've experienced it versus being what I call a reciter. A reciter is someone that learns a lesson plan and just recites the bullet points from the lesson plan. They don't know if it's true because they didn't dive into that pool. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I want to show you something really quick. This is on my body armor that I wear at the range. I'm going to try to do this right. Can you read that patch right there?
No, because you're using a camera or dial-up internet connection from the 1990s. It says do work, though. I'll let them know it says do work.
I love it.
Do work. And that's what you just said is exactly what that patch means.
Yeah, I love it.
I have a very similar conversation with my instructor candidates at the end of our range session, talking exactly about what you're talking about right now.
Awesome.
I think Jeff had a follow-up.
Yeah. So in regards to the content and the amount of content that Mike has out there, I mean, it literally is insane, the amount of content that he has. I mean, you can see it all like Seeklander.com. It gives you kind of access to see all that stuff. But my take on that is that, so whenever you train with Mike and you go to a class training with Mike, you can train with Mike before you get there to sort of give you like a understanding of what's ready, sort of preparing yourself to train. Then you get to one of his training classes. Now you're executing and applying some of the stuff you've learned and picking up more stuff. So you're hopefully retaining another level of information. And then after you're done, it's not just like some other instructors where you're done for that class and that's it. They're gone. It's like you can continue that training after that. And he teaches you how to be able to continue your training. That way you can get better all year round. And I mean, it's phenomenal. I mean, he has a passion for it and he always, hashtag do the work, and really focusing on that. And all of the content is just a training extension that allows you to continue that, to get those reps in, and to make sure that you're making all of those fundamentals subconscious to you, like he stated earlier. That way, once you get that level of subconscious shooting, now you can start doing other stuff. And you're not just making bad habits of subconscious, you're making good training decisions to make good subconscious movements.
Yeah.
It kind of all groups into one, right? We've talked about this big pool of instructor and learning that we should be doing as instructors. That pool is not a pool. It's the size of the ocean. And it just depends on how deep you really want to go to learn. Mike, you were talking about, you thought about, should I be really giving all this content away? Jeff, how much content have you seen free from Mike's? And then how many courses have you taken?
So I wouldn't want to say this, but I've actually downloaded a lot of this content too, because I like to use it for my own evil purposes. But I've seen, if he's got 500 hours of content up there, I've probably seen about 350 hours of it. And not just once, but multiple times, because there'll be stuff that he'll say, all right, this week you were going to work on this very specific fundamental. And instead of just looking at that, I'll go reference that content. Like, oh, here's that nugget of thing that I need to look at. Oh, make sure that my grip is tight all the way through everything. It's every little tiny piece of bullet point that I can re-listen to again to help myself before I go to the range. Or if I'm identifying something that I need to do either in my daily dry fire or my daily reps, or before I go to the range, it's stuff that I can re-reference to be able to get my own mental stuff and gear ready to go so that I can focus that when I start my training as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it shows how hungry you are. And for all the people that want to go out and shoot, this is what we got to do. This is how we've got to be hungry to continue to learn. This is how you get better. Really quick, Tim Herron's on the Facebook live chat, and he said, Mike Seeklander is one of my biggest mentors in the industry. I love that guy and enjoy shooting with him as much as I can. So, Mike, I have a question for you. I know you've trained out in California, which is where Jeff's at. Sorry about that, but it is what it is. It seems like we always get skipped over here in New Mexico, kind of Texas. So when are you coming around our area?
Well, man, that's a good question. I've actually been to New Mexico. I taught an FIDC in New Mexico recently. Texas, the last time I taught in Texas was a rifle course, but I've done defensive handgun and rifleman. I love going to Texas. I'm in Oklahoma, so I just drive south and I'll hit Texas, man. So love to do it.
You were, I thought you did an instructor course here in, I think it was southern New Mexico.
Las Cruces, yeah.
Las Cruces. Last year, was it?
Yeah, last December, actually.
Yeah. I forget. It might have been Tim that was talking to me about that, but I forget who it was, but I know one of the students that was in that class. Kind of bummed that I missed it. That's on my list of classes that I want to get out and take. Jeff, I wanted to kick it back over to you. Who is the competition handgun level 1 course for outside of the competitive shooter that wants to make a run for it? Is this class kind of extend over into the defensive student as well?
So I definitely think it does. And Mike does a really great job of dispelling the myths of competition versus defensive and making sure he explains certain things like, hey, this is going to be used in a competitive environment for these reasons, and here's why. And he explains that stuff in the training. But anybody interested in, and I think Mike would agree with me on this, but anyone interested in learning how to be a better handler of firearms and how to be a better shooter to come out and do the work is to take a class. And I think like somebody that's just interested in just defensive handgun, if they come and take a competitive handgun class, they're going to see things because it's just like how many seconds you're in a fight, you're in a competition. The victor is going to win and survive. I mean, it's kind of that same type of thing. And you're going to learn the same type of stuff that's going to help you be faster and do the right things. But it's still always boils down to fundamentals and subconscious fundamentals.
What's the, I want to get both of your guys' takes on this, but Jeff, let's start with you. What, in your opinion, what is the minimum skill set that a student should have before considering this course or before taking the class?
That's a great question. I would think definitely basic knowledge of their firearm and how to, holster a firearm safely. As long as you have safe gun handling skills, and they be able and no fear of it, and having at least a minimal amount of confidence in your ability to manipulate the firearm and handle it. I think that's all you need, because Mike's going to take you from that and increase your confidence level, your capabilities, and your competence for all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I would only add to it in the defensive course versus the competition course. I asked for specifically that in the defensive. In the competition course, I add on that I would like the shooter to either be classified in either of the sports or any of the sports, or to have shot a 3-match minimum, or to get my permission based on their previous training. And that's not just for their gun handling, although that's part of it, because in a competition handgun course, most of these people are going to be hobbyists to an extent. They're probably going to be more into this, and they may have a little bit more skill level. Some of them certainly don't. But most importantly, I want them to be able to understand my language if we're talking about, so if you encounter this thing on a stage, here's how you accomplish this skill that will allow you to hit the target faster. And if they have no clue what I'm talking about in terms of this thing on a stage, or even what a stage is, then they're automatically behind, and they miss some of the sprinkling, of gold nuggets along the class. So that's the reason for that.
That makes quite a bit of sense. If you have a basic pistol student and you keep talking about muzzling or flagging somebody and they're like, what the heck is that? It makes a lot of sense. So we have another listener. His name's Yehuda Reamer. He's the Pew Pew Jew, if you've never heard of him. He's been on our podcast as well. He said, can you ask Mike how he approaches gun safety when giving a class? Does he have any issues with some shooters not being proficient in the safety aspect of shooting?
Yeah. So in terms of safety, I do a very detailed safety briefing. We actually read a safety list of rules that I have, and I explain and expand on those safety rules. We designate a safe gun handling area. I designate exactly where people will handle guns or where they won't handle guns. And then in all of the classes that I do, we start out the entire, and Jeff could correct me if I'm wrong in his class, but half of the day or more dry fire. We don't shoot a full live round until typically after lunch or maybe just right before lunch. And the reason for that is they've done probably literally a couple hundred repetitions of drawing and stepping, drawing and turning, drawing, picking up the gun. And I'm watching them draw and handle the gun. And then I'm watching exactly where the muzzle goes when they put the gun back in the holster, which is really, really important. And I'm also pretty specific about, if you show up to class and you don't meet the prerequisite that you're supposed to, have a lower level of competency where you can safely handle your firearm, then, you can watch, but you're not going to endanger myself or the other students. So I'm pretty strict about that. And I've certainly had some safety violations, and I've handled them as aggressively as they need to be handled. I've removed students in the past. I've also given warnings and allowed students to stay. And, basically with the communication, if they have any other issues, then they're going to have to leave the class.
How do you manage? Jeff had mentioned there's a range between the newer shooter in class and to the advanced shooters. How do you manage the different skill sets that you'll have in a classroom on the line?
In a competition handgun course, believe it or not, largely the skill that I need to get across to someone who theoretically is more advanced. I quote that word because advanced is a term that I don't use very often. And to get the very basic or the newest shooter there to shoot better is probably the same thing. Maybe it has to do with grip mechanics or understanding something about trigger. I've only had a couple people in my classes ever that were actually so good that I probably didn't tweak many of their fundamental skill sets. But to be honest, at the end of the class, they were thrilled because they're like, I've never seen it taught that way, or I've never heard this. They valued the class anyways. But, remember, if I'm having you practice your extended grip or your draw right next to someone who's much more basic or maybe much more advanced, you're not comparing yourself to the person to your left and right of my classes. You're comparing you to you. So, all right, I just extended the handgun. I fired a shot. It felt like this speed. I got these hits. How do I do it better in the next repetition? But a lot of times, believe it or not, people that think they're advanced are not nearly as advanced as they think. And then, to be honest with you, fundamental level students recognize that right away, and they're like an open book.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in here really quick. I can't remember who said it, but the wise man. What's the phrase I'm looking for, Andy? The smartest person in the room is the person that knows what they don't know, kind of thing, and they're willing to absorb.
Jeff, what was the most challenging part of the class for you?
There's a fire hose of information, and I'm one of those like training nerds. I've got a notepad and I take notes in every single class because I have to go back and like re-examine, like, all right, here's what he said. That's how I do this. Because there's so much information. It's being able for me, it was just being able to focus on little things here and there, and not get overwhelmed by all of the information. But that was just my own personal thing because I like try to soak in everything that I can. And one of the things that I think is also hard is you got to go into any training situation and have an open mind and be prepared to try things that you don't agree with, or try things to see like, oh, somebody told me this, but they're asking me to do that. Try it and see, and just be open-minded for it, because you never know what's going to happen. It might be that magical golden nugget that you've tried resisting from time to time. And then when you finally try it that once, it's just like a magic light bulb. And I've had many of those, many of those moments.
Yeah, on that note, Mike, I have a question for you. So I've taken a few classes, different instructors, And exactly what you said, you try to be an open book and you try to learn and pick and take the things that you like and the things that you don't like from different instructors. And just one thing that I always see kind of often, and I want your opinion on it and how you feel. So, well, you'll go to one instructor and he'll say, I only allow the tap over the top power stroke. You go to another course and they'll say, you know what, it's fine if you turn the gun sideways and you do the slingshot method. How do you feel as an instructor when you see students that come in, they're proficient at what they're doing? Do you change it? Are you set on certain things? How does that work in your course?
Yeah, no. I am a big believer of conveying information and then letting the student make a decision on their own. So, if we're talking about whatever manipulation of the handgun, whatever they're doing or they've been taught, if they're really good at it and there's something that I believe is better, I show them what's better and I try to teach them how to try that thing so then they can analyze it and make a decision. Okay, this is actually a better thing. But I'm a big believer in providing information. If as instructors, I think once again we get tied to certain things, and there are very few things where I'm going to tell you you need to do it like this. Matter of fact, I can't really think of anything other than safety related issues or things that we wouldn't teach, it's stuff like that. But I'm a big believer in giving the student full information. Honestly, probably too many details. If I had to critique myself as an instructor, probably too many details sometimes, and then letting them decide based on what their body type is and what their beliefs are and how they're going to use the skill set as well. Because there's some things I could tell a student and it might be like, this is going to give you just a hair of an edge. Maybe it might make you a little better in the long run, but you're going to have to put in all of these countless repetitions, developing a stronger habit than you've already ingrained in your subconscious. You got to weigh out whether that's worth it or not, or if you'd rather spend that time working on something that actually matters in a fight, maybe your fitness or whatever else. We're talking about defensive handgun. So I'm a big believer in presenting the details of the information and letting students make a decision themselves. And a lot of times, the proof is in the pudding. We always say that, but in the class, they'll end up seeing it. And I'll be like, you see that? That's why I told you on a regular basis, you need to load the gun the same way, because that consistency or inconsistency just cost you the loss in that shoot off that we just had. Or I saw that, whatever it was. So
I like it.
Yeah, I love it too. So I'm a newer instructor. I think 3-4 years in now, something like that. And I've taken many courses, as I said, and some people, and I used to be hardcore about one certain thing, for example, and then you'd go to a class and you do a Mike Seeklander class. And he says, you know what, you're doing good on that, but you know what, try this. This works really well. And you're like, hey, you know what, I really like this. Mm-hmm. And then you go to another course and they're like, why are you doing it like that? This is ridiculous. And I love instructors that have that open mind, that we're not so set on this black and white. This is how we do things. So kudos to you for that. I really like that.
Thanks.
Hey, Jeff, when in that class, how much time is devoted to, I guess, what's the split between the working the handgun with regards to competition, and how is that split with gaming the stages, if you will? Because there's a lot of the high level competitive shooters, they have a mental edge where they can look at the course and they know where they can shave off a 1/10 of a second here or a 1/10 of a second there. Is that covered in competition, the Handgun Level I, or is that in a secondary course?
It's alluded to in the Level 1 and gone more over in Level 2. But Level 1, he goes over, he has a thing that has our vision statements to help us build confidence and things that we need to focus on. He goes over mindset and like how we do a little bit of a stage breakdown and stage markers and stop markers, different little intro pieces to some of that stuff. But it's a teaser into more advanced thinking and mindset and movement that happens in the Advanced Level 2 course.
Mike, if I'm a competitive shooter, at what point, what level of proficiency should I be at before that kind of mindset and thought process enters my mind? If that question does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But but we need to recognize the fact that if you can't present the handgun to the target in any given position and hold it there long enough to hit the shot, to hit an acceptable scoring area, an A or a 0, A for USPSA, 0 for IDPA, your stage breakdown and how you game the stage will never matter. So I've evolved to the point where I do sprinkle some of the mental stuff in because I want them to start to learn to control the mental processes, because remember, that's part of their practice routine. In my book, I talk a lot about the mental side of the game being part of your practice routine. So you're going through your visualizations, your performance statement, you're utilizing your focus breath, you're using these tools in practice so they become routine. But as far as gaming a stage, a newer shooter, a basic level competitive shooter, or maybe a somewhat intermediate shooter, their focus should absolutely be on executing the shot in any position they might with either hand, with any movement dynamic that's going on. The moment you enter a club match, the moment you say, I'm going to go sign up for a local match and I'm going to go shoot this club match, you're learning the game. Okay. That is only learned from experience. So what I normally do though, is I'll either do a 2-day class if the coordinator has a local match, and then we'll schedule and I'll stay for the match for the third day, which is free to the students. They don't pay for me to do that. I get to shoot a match with them. It's fun. It's just one more day of travel for me. Or I do a 2-day class, then an advanced movement class that follows it. And then we stay for the match. And that's where I really start to coach them through the process of gaming the stages or whatever else. But it's really important people understand, and until you can hold the gun on target and hit the shot, nothing actually matters. There's no game you can play if you can't hit the shot.
I want to go, I kind of want to move this conversation briefly over into the defensive side of stuff. Because oftentimes we see things in the firearms training industry and we see students worrying about X or Y something. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. But for me, it's, I'll go back to, if that student is having the conversation with themselves, and that mental conversation with themselves, they've reached a level of maturity with their firearms training and taking their personal protection, taking that with an intelligent approach, that they're okay. Now they can kind of seek out that level of training. Do you think where students kind of jump into that realm, the advanced shooting, a little bit sooner than they should? Kind of same question. What level of proficiency should somebody be with their defensive handgun and their defensive skill set before they seek out that, the unconventional shooting position course, or running and gunning course? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is. And for me, it's real hard to put a number. I mean, I've watched a lot of people out there on YouTube and heard some different podcasts and shows, and everybody wants to have a test, the triple nickel thing or the 2 and 2 and blah, 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 whatever test it is. Me, I'm a big believer in your skill set is a continually moving thing. It never stops. It never evolves. Someone asked me recently, hey, so at the end of the program, your defensive handgun training program, what then? And I said, nothing. It never ends, right? Once you start, it never ends. There's a chapter in the book that has to do with documenting your training, then analyzing the results, and then modifying the program for you, right? So it never actually ends. So I can't really put a number on how good a defensive handgunner should be. But we know for a fact that as a civilian or even as a law enforcement guy or gal, if you go get into a fight, it's going to be pretty much this, right? And we know the distances. We know the time frames. You can watch literally hundreds of videos a day. I mean, just get on YouTube, get on, active self-protection, John Correa's page. That might be maybe you were thinking about earlier. But the point is, learn those things and get good at those things that we see happen on a regular basis. And then if you're like, man, I'm pretty solid at them. I'm pretty darn good at these particular skill sets, which a lot of people are not. They don't put the time and the effort in. I mean, truthfully, people that are watching this are probably, because they're avid shooters. They're watching a gun live stream show about training classes. But the other 100,000 million people out there with a concealed carry permit right now have it stuck in their glove box somewhere, and they haven't shot it for 8 months or a year, right? And by the way, if that's you, shame on you. Slap yourself up the side of the head. And not you guys, but anybody watching this, anybody that ever watches this, slap the crap out of yourself. Get out there and train. But then there's a point where I go, now do I need to do advanced? What is advanced? Like, do we need to know how to, do a one-handed clearing, malfunction clearing? Yeah, that might be advanced, but that certainly might be a thing that we might have to do. Do we need to learn low light? Well, do you carry a flashlight in your pocket every day? Is it possible your garage door might be open? Maybe that seems advanced, but those are the things that we might encounter. perfect those or get pretty good at them and then start exploring other things.
Nice. I like it. Jeff, same question kind of over to you. Where do you see, in your opinion, for the responsibly armed citizen, at what point do you think people are jumping to that next level? Is it the one-handed malfunction or the weapon mount light, that discussion? Where do you think people are kind of missing the boat with taking a step back and focusing on fundamentals before they seek out that next level stuff?
Well, I think everybody, they want to be, as proficient as possible, and they might not understand what their level of proficiency actually is. And to the focusing on the fundamentals to make those really be subconscious is the primary aspect, that no matter what your skill level is, that's always going to be key. It doesn't matter if it's low light and you're one-handed shooting. If you can't hold the gun still and you can't manipulate your trigger finger without moving the gun, doesn't matter how much you've trained or how tactical you can, kick flip a one-handed, reload off your shoe. It doesn't matter. That won't matter. But the actual fundamentals of being able to manipulate and fire your firearm and hit that intended target and that intended shot, whatever trigger pull speed you might need, that's going to be key. Even if you think you're there, you can always learn more and you can always evolve yourself and get better. And those advanced, like I'm air quoting, advanced features and techniques are just like peppered things that you can try to add more stuff into. But it's, for me, and what I've learned from Mike and others, is it's fundamentals.
Yeah. So just to go back and hammer back home what we're talking about, last November, Andy and I had the opportunity to go train at Thunder Ranch, and it was a private tutorial. There was 4 of us in the class, and he being Clint Smith, understood that every single person in that class was an instructor. And what Clint did was he focused on trying to teach us how to teach the fundamentals. And did we roll in the dirt? Absolutely. Did we get smoky wet and nasty and snowy and muddy? Absolutely. But the entire time we were in that class, right or wrong, Andy, he was focusing on teaching the fundamentals.
Yeah, absolutely. Every single class I've been to is all fundamentals driven. As Mike said in the beginning, he spends a good part of the first day just doing dry firing, holstering, reholstering, stuff like that. All that stuff, like you said, if you can't shoot, you can't compete. It's the same thing. If you can't draw your holster safely and reholster it slowly, then it doesn't matter what you're doing.
Before we wrap up, Jeff, what's one thing you wish you knew the day before you took this class? Or one piece of advice that you have for students that are about to take this course?
And lottery numbers are not the right answer.
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I wish I knew that it was going to be mentally okay, that it didn't matter if I was a sharpshooter and there was going to be masters in the class, that it didn't matter, that it really was okay to be, a beginning level shooter, and that I wasn't going to be looked down upon. In fact, there's going to be a lot of time spent with, hey, here's how you improve. And it's really a nurturing environment. I was my own biggest hindrance to, should I go take a real class? Should I go do this stuff? And that was always the thing, that if I would have known how amazing it is to take those classes and really get in there and how much more you learn and elevate your skill sets, that's what I would have known, is just to know to go and do it.
That's awesome. And Mike, what's one thing you wish, what's one piece of advice you have for students that are about to take this class?
Take it sooner. Literally, and when I mean that literally, I always tell everybody publicly, if it's not my class, I know what I'm going to teach you. If it's someone else's really good class, I'm sure you guys have had some other great instructors, do it sooner, because the more time you spend being afraid to go to training and doing repetitions that may not be as good as you want them to be, you're literally just ingraining or myelinating bad habits. And you can't uningrain them. You have to now then do twice as much work to build a stronger, better habit that will facilitate more success in the end. So take a class sooner than later.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Mike. I have one last question before I toss it back over to my co-host, Jeremy. fresh out of the brand new baby box gill. And so you guys do 3-gun, right?
Me? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done 3-gun. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm in an active long-term bet with a bunch of buddies of mine, and I would like to know if you build an AR or assemble an AR.
I think you assemble an AR.
All right, Jeff, build an AR or assemble an AR?
I think you assemble an AR unless you're milling it yourself.
All right. Awesome. Right on. Jeremy, back to you.
Well, what about Legos? It's irrelevant is my answer to that question if it's ever asked to me. Hey, we really appreciate you guys jumping on. Before we jump off of here, is there any parting advice that you have for our listeners?
For me individually, if you want to know more about me, go to all the sites. We've listed them. They're going to list them. I don't need to say that, but man, jump on the Facebook Live in the morning if you're on, or maybe watch the after action video, or do it I do one in the morning, one in the afternoon. Try that first. If you like what you see and we have a good interaction, then consider jumping in one of my classes. I'd love to meet you.
Hey, on that, with your daily dry fire challenges, I noticed that you have a daily dry fire challenge, and then you typically have a Zoom meeting afterwards. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
And is that Zoom meeting for your American Warrior Society members only, or is that open to?
Yeah, Zoom is for members only for either AWS or the competitive society. We have two. One is all defensive content. One is all competitive content, because there's so much of it. And honestly, people started getting confused. So they're separate areas, but I do one Zoom session for all of those members at one time. And those are just posted for members. I have done some Zoom sessions in the past that are free and open, but to put it bluntly, that, I can see you on Zoom just like we can see each other now. So I can actually coach, it's a unique tool. I wanted to give my members something special, because they're, a lot of free people that I appreciate very much jumping on, but these are guys and gals that have ponied up some money to spend some time with me. So.
And that's American Warrior Society. Where, if somebody was interested in finding more out about that program specifically, where can they go? Is it MikeSeeklander.com?
Yeah, if they go, the thing about MikeSeeklander.com is it has everything. I mean, there's the free drills book, there's the DDC, the replay area that's free for like the first 5 or 6. A lot of really good free resources. But there's also links to American Warrior Society and the American Competitive Shooter Society, and then the other full program. So everything is on that page.
And if you're interested in that, I can tell you I've been a member for, at least 6 months, 8 months, if I'm remembering correctly. And there's more content that you'll ever imagine for the price point of what it is. So get over there, check that out. Jeff, what about you? Any parting advice you have for our listeners?
Yeah, my advice is to don't be afraid. Go ahead and do it. And don't wait till tomorrow. Do the work today and start doing the work. I mean, that's the only way you're going to get better, is to do the work.
Andy and Judson, what do you guys have?
Wow, yeah. Going on. Got that fixed?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Thanks, you guys, for hopping on. I'd love to take one of your courses. Hopefully there'll be one again out here in Las Cruces, or even better, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Just saying. I really like your videos. When I found out you were coming on, I've kind of watched here and there, but there's so many instructors. And again, that ocean pool of instruction is deep. And this is my life, and I've watched YouTube and all this, and I've been really enjoying your videos lately, Mike, and I'm looking forward to getting some training with you in the future. Jeff, thank you so much for hopping on. Congratulations on all of your achievements as a competition shooter, and I appreciate you being on here, and nice meeting you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for watching.
Judson, before we go to you, Steven Martinez says that he's been following Mike on social media for a while now. Really appreciate what he shares. And then to Andy's comment about training in Albuquerque, Tim Herron moved out here not too long ago, and he's teaching some classes. So there's a good market for some competitive shooters. So yeah, if it's on your radar.
Yeah, love to do it, man. I'll tell you what, though, I've not been to Tim's class. Obviously, he took my class, but he's a phenomenal shooter, and I would guess he's probably a phenomenal instructor. So I would certainly recommend him too.
Yeah, really a little quick story about Tim Herron. So we kind of knew he was coming to Albuquerque. He's kind of been the big deal through Facebook. And I went to a competition at one of our local clubs. And as me and my wife were pulling up to the gate, there was a little car on the right that was sitting there waiting to get in. He wasn't a member yet. Open the gate. He drives through, and my wife says, "Oh, that guy's from Missouri." I said, "Oh, that's cool." As we're signing in, I heard him say, "Oh, my name's Tim." And I said, "Are you Tim Herron?" He said, "Yeah." So luckily for me, through the blessings of the gods, I got to shoot with Tim that day and watch how well he shoots.
Sure.
And Tim is an amazing instructor. After we were done, he said, Andy, do you got 10 minutes? I said, "I got an hour and 10 minutes for you." You know? And he spent about 10 to 20 minutes just on a couple little simple tweaks for me to get better. And he moved me from a 4-second start to about a 1.5 seconds just like 2 changes. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, we're looking forward to having Tim on the podcast as well. But
I'll watch that one. That'd be very interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll probably has a spare bedroom. You know, you can come out too.
I'll make it down there.
I'm volunteering him already.
Hey, Andy, aren't you in my bedroom?
I am, oddly enough. I am in the bedroom.
They're co-partners, I think, is what the 2018 term for Andy and Judson. But Judson, what's your parting advice for everybody?
We always end this with, more training, 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 do work. And, I always try to get away from that whole train more, because that's what everybody says. And the one thing that came to my mind was train more and then relax more, take time off, spend time with your family, get your head right in the game, and, go fishing if that's what you do. Andy, as well as I do that I haven't been able to fish in like 9 or 10 months, and fishing is absolutely, everything in front of me. Andy's seen my workroom. Every picture in front of me, there's probably 3 dozen of them are me holding fish, and I haven't been able to do that. And what I'm saying is we go out and train a lot, and we're hoping everybody's training a lot, but also take time for the small stuff. Take time for the stuff that you haven't been able to do. Andy went hunting this past year, and after several years, finally bagged his first deer. You relaxed, you enjoyed yourself, you came back refreshed, and now you're ready for the game, right? So that's my kind of parting advice, is make sure you, while we're all training and enjoying ourselves on the range, also take time for your wives, kids, hobbies, all that stuff.
Love it.
Nice. Love it. We appreciate everybody jumping on. You'll find us next Monday, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Remember, it's your life, it's your safety and protection, it's your responsibility. You guys stay safe and have a great night. Man, we really hope you enjoyed listening to that episode as much as we did interviewing and having our guests on. Be sure to share this with your friends and family and head over to patreon.com/afteractionproject. We'd love to have you on as a guest panelist, and be sure to check out those other rewards that we have for our Patreons.
If you're a recent graduate of a firearms-related training course and would like to join us on our show, or if you'd like us to review a specific firearm-related training course or instructor, shoot an email to show@afteractionproject.com. Remember to join a local firearms advocacy organization. As always, stay safe, shoot straight, and remember to secure your firearms so that unauthorized persons cannot gain access to them.